é um verdadeiro cidadão global, tendo passado tempos em muitos lugares diferentes ao redor do mundo. Ele morou no Japão por 8 anos, China por 7, Boston por 10 anos e atualmente em Austin por 3. Ele tem uma experiência profissional diversificada, que, combinada com a diversidade cultural, faz dele uma pessoa única, com capacidade de unir diferentes culturas empresariais e produzir valor. Ele esteve envolvido no lado financeiro do empreendedorismo por 3 anos e depois em marketing por 4 anos, todos sob o tema blockchain. Uma salva de palmas ao nosso palestrante.
É um prazer estar aqui com vocês. That was the hardest part about the presentation. So unfortunately, I can't use Portuguese to complete the presentation today, but hopefully next time I come here, my Portuguese will be better. So a little bit about my background. So for the past few years, I helped startups in e-commerce at Facebook for 2.5 years. I was personally responsible for over $100 million in advertising in e-commerce. I was part of the fastest growing team at Facebook to manage the fastest growing startups that raised $20 to $50 million in venture capital funding. And some of the names you may have heard before are here. And more recently, I've transitioning into a VC venture capital role for a family office that is strictly and exclusively investing in blockchain technologies. And I'm sure you guys have heard about the blockchain and the Bitcoin and all the press. And we're going to talk about the blockchain that's happening today and not about the technology, because you can Google that online. So a little bit about my background. I was born in Japan. I spent 7 years there. I'm native Japanese speaker. And my family's from China, so I speak Chinese fluently as well. Lived there for 8 years, and I spent the last 10 years in Boston, 3 years in Austin. It gives me a tremendous amount of opportunity and advantage in this global industry and the globalization that's happening today. And this is the firm that I'm currently working for, Yeoman's Capital. We're a small team of 3 people, and we're based out of Austin, Texas, but we're never there. Clearly, I'm here for 2 weeks, and I travel quite often to Asia, Europe, and in different jurisdictions around the world. So the thesis of our fund, or our investments, is based on our founder, David Johnston, and his vision of the industry, of blockchain industry. He believes that everything that can be decentralized will be decentralized. In fact, he believed in so much. In 2012, he bought Bitcoin at $10 and proceeded to start the first angel group in the space in 2013. And in 2014, started the first venture fund that exclusively investing in tokens, the coins, what we call it today, and helped Vitalik and Ethereum launch their ICOs. And now, after 2 years of venture capital and accepting outside LP limited partner money, we've decided to invest our own money to start a family office. And that's the state of where we are. So we're the first family office that exclusively invests 100% of our assets into blockchain. And what kind of projects are we investing in? We invest in open source projects. We invest in projects that are decentralized, which means there is no entity or company that's registered in any country. There are shell companies, but those companies don't perform the way that traditionally does. We also invest in permissionless companies, which means anyone and everyone can have access to these projects and technologies without someone keeping the gate open, without someone says, you can be here or you can be here. There are no choices. Anyone should be able to use these technologies. And we believe in the token system and have them tokenized because the tokens rewards the open source community. The tokens help these contributors progress and innovate further. And because of my background, I'm fortunate to be able to partner with funds, investors, and projects in Asia, in Japan, and China, specifically, of course, in the US. But the globalization of the Bitcoin and the blockchain industry is further than that. There are no borders. There are no borders at all with the blockchain industry because assets can now freely move from China to Japan to Canada to Dubai to Estonia to Brazil, to all over the world without any permission of any government or any company. And hence, our work is purely global, and I'm traveling quite often, and I'm here. Great, so before we jump into the content, the core information that I'd like to provide to you guys, I'd like all of you to think about what will the world look like in 2030? And if you're waiting for me to give you that answer, I don't have the answer. I definitely don't. If I did, I would be the richest person on earth. But I'd like you guys to think about what that world will look like. It's not too far away. It's about 12 years from now. And specifically, I'd like you guys to think about what would companies look like, what will organizations look like, and what would money look like in 2030. And today, I want to share with you guys not what blockchain is changing the industry, but how the industry is changing and how blockchain is accelerating that growth of change. And starting with companies. I'm sure you guys are familiar with these companies on the left and the company on the right. I think last night almost everyone took Uber to the restaurant. My friends have told me Cabify and 99 are fairly popular in Brazil. And I just want to remind everyone that this only happened several years ago. 2009 started in the US. And prior to that, all of the taxis were owned by conglomerates, giants, and big corporations, especially in New York. The yellow cabs, they're famously owned by cabs that are yellow. That's it. What Uber did was giving that power back to the drivers and every person that has a car to be able to be flexible and own their schedule and provide a system that's transparent with a better service and that benefited everyone. So they essentially decentralized the taxi industry. And let's go to the next industry. I'm not sure how much Brazilians use Airbnb or any of the sharing economy, but in the US it's quite popular because it gives you a unique experience that hotels cannot provide. And what Airbnb has done is giving that power back to anyone that has a room, that has a home, to be able to serve as a hotel, to serve as a place for people to stay. Right? And same with Flipkey, same with HomeAway, and there are many, many companies that are sort of replicating that model. And before them, you had to stay in a hotel. Now you have a choice to stay at someone else's home. And you could pay less, you could have a better experience, and the hosts that maybe in the past worked for these hotels, now they can provide their own home and provide their own unique experience to share with the people who are visiting. And guess what they have done? They've decentralized the hotel industry and giving that power back to the people, and it provides reviews and transparency that has never existed in the past. So that's two industries. And now let's look at the telecom industry or the messaging. Do you guys remember when you had to count how many texts you've sent because each text actually costs money? Or how many minutes of phone call that you have per month? And guess what happened? Now we have all these options. And Facebook has, my former company, has 3 out of the top 8. But in Japan, there's Line. In China, there's WeChat. In Russia, there's Telegram and Snapchat in the US. And you have Kakao Talk in South Korea and Kik. You have so many other options besides text messaging and calling. We've effectively decentralized the way we communicate, and you have all the options at a much more efficient way. It's cheaper, it's faster, a better user experience. In the news industry, so this is in the US. I'm not quite sure how the Brazilian news industry works, but in the US, on the right side, you can see these are the top 5 publishers or the news channels. And if you ask people, say, 15 years ago, before the internet, they have to rely on the news source and whatever these news companies publish. So your content and your information purely comes from these companies, and you don't necessarily have a choice. But in the last 10 years or so, we've changed that. Now you can go on Facebook, although Facebook still controls your news feed. But you have more options to see news from other channels. Bloomberg has moved forward and started building an app on technology on their own. Google, of course, they're in the center of information. Apple News, Snapchat Discover, LinkedIn Newsfeed, Twitter. We all know Donald Trump is using Twitter every day. So it's definitely news now. It's kind of forced to be news every day in the US at least. So we've effectively changed that model as well. Now we have a choice as consumers, as readers, to read not just from these channels or watch TV channels just by CNN or MSNBC, and now we can watch from anywhere and other publishers. It's giving more options for the users. So what all these companies have done in the past 10, 15 years or so, it follows the same trend. We remove the middleman and give power back to the consumers, and we've created a more efficient system because of it. And it's effectively the same as the ethos that follows the decentralization in the blockchain. So when people say decentralization, many people think about as decentralizing the government or avoiding the government. But the movement has started long before that, long before Bitcoin, long before any of these crazy ICOs that raise billions of dollars. They've started with the tech companies and the internet, and even prior to that. It's about always striving for a more efficient system. And now, a lot of the other industries haven't really been decentralized, as we know. The internet hasn't changed everything. In fact, the world of assets, in particular, has not changed at all. If you look at commercial real estate, and look at the top 100 Forbes list, how many billionaires are in commercial real estate? And how many of us can invest the same way that these investors do into giant skyscrapers in Hong Kong or New York? That hasn't been disrupted. There's a high bar to enter that field that commoners like us can't necessarily have the capital or the connections to get to. And those are the things that blockchain as a movement is disrupting, because these projects are doing just that. So if you go to slice.market, they are putting commercial real estate on the blockchain, and you can purchase them on secondary exchanges. as low as a few $100s. Polymath is a company that we sit on the board for, and we invest in them in 2017. They're putting all the securities on the blockchain, and they're a issuance using smart contracts based out of Canada. Harbor is a Silicon Valley company doing something similar. They're trying to let equity be on the blockchain that's more fluid and more global. And last but not least, Securitize is based out of Tel Aviv, solving a similar issue. So basically, we're breaking down barriers in industries that couldn't have been broken in the past, and blockchain is facilitating that. And let's look at another industry that hasn't really been disrupted through the internet age. The banks, the Goldman Sachs, the JP Morgan, the HSBC, right? The internet did not really affect them. They were great before the internet. They're still giant and great today. And many people think that they can't be disrupted or they're too big to fail, but that's not true, because today, for the first time, they're being challenged. In terms of transaction fees, a company called Stellar allows you to transact at a penny to anywhere around the world today, within 4 seconds. I can send $1 billion, in theory, from here to Nigeria to New York and back to Brazil within less than a minute, with no permission of any banks. And same with other companies like Ripple, Dash, Bitcoin Cash. A lot of these companies are solving the issue of banks taking transaction fees or MoneyGram or remittance industry. Omise Go is targeting the unbanked. There are many people around the world that don't have banks. Salt is providing lending to people who hold cryptocurrencies with cash. And more we'll see peer-to-peer lending in the future based on blockchain. In fact, 2 days ago, China announced that they have officially issued a $300,000 loan based on asset-backed security in China on the blockchain. And if you still think the banks will not adopt it or will not be affected, 12 out of the 26 publicly traded banks in China is already working with blockchain. And every day they're making announcements about more and more technologies that are built on top of blockchain, and eventually they will issue a currency based on a blockchain. So to summarize, blockchain is simply disrupting areas that couldn't have been disrupted before. It's not changing the world because it came out and decided to change the world. It's changing the world because it's following the trend of what has happened in the past with technology companies in general, and it's looking at areas that hasn't been disrupted for the purpose of creating a more efficient system in the world, of course. So that's about companies and the innovations moving forward. How many of you guys are here founders and CEOs? Raise your hand if you're a founder or a CEO. Great, awesome. Cool, does your organization currently look like this? Is it a top-down approach where there's CEO to 2 VPs to 3 directors to 4 managers to 10 people under each manager? And we all know how that's changing, because I work for a company that is very much a flat organization. At Facebook, they specifically hire less people and have less than 7 people per manager for that purpose. At $400 or $500 billion valuation, which it has gone down more recently, but Mark told you that it was going to go down. They're about a third of the size of Google, right? And because they're able to keep the organization more flat, and that's the only reason why they let someone like me manage $100 million at Facebook. So more people have more responsibilities. And that is sort of a shift that's happening in the organization structures. And how many of you guys have hired freelancers and workers that are not in your office? Raise your hand if you're working with freelancers internationally. Okay. Well, more and more people are accepting flexibility as an option, and it wants to work from home in the US. So this is from Mary Meeker's post. She's one of the most famous VCs in the Silicon Valley. Sends out a report every year from Client Perkins. And if you look at the trend of the growth of freelancers, it's triple of workers in general. It's at 8% growth. So more and more people are choosing to be freelancers, and because of the flexibility, because of the freedom, because of the geo-independence, and it can be anywhere around the world, and you can choose to live anywhere or somewhere where you're happy and keeping the costs low. Not necessarily San Francisco and New York, and that's actually one of the reasons why a lot of people are moving to Austin, Texas, which is where I'm based. And Facebook has the second largest office in Austin out of Silicon Valley because the cost is low and there's no state income tax. So it's all shifting towards this freelancing, flexible economy, and that fits perfectly into what I mentioned in the beginning, which is rewards-based contribution for the open source economy with tokens. And it's permissionless, so there's no hiring process. There's no interview process. Can you do the work? Okay, do the work. Contribute to open source. You will be rewarded by the tokens from the projects. They're location independent. And if you look at these organizations, IOTA, and if you look at the jobs that are available on Bitcoin Cash, and all these companies have raised hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars, over half of the jobs says remote, right? And there's even more bounties that can be available to complete certain tasks, and Rocket Chat will mention a little bit about that later. And this is a whole new movement that blockchain has enabled. And this allows us to create a new structure of freelance economy, right? So there's no bosses, no managers, there's just people who can contribute and reward it appropriately. If we can do this right, this will be the most efficient system for organization. And this is a trend that has been happening before blockchain, but because of blockchain, it's accelerating even faster and moving more and more towards there. Cool? In short, blockchain is accelerating the movement for a new workplace. All right, let's talk about money. We all need money, and we all know that it's changing. It has already changed many, many times in many shape or form. How many of you guys have more than a few hundred reals in your wallet? Don't raise your hand. I don't want to know. Don't tell me. I'm not responsible for that. I'm not going to tell you how many I have. But we all know, if I have to guess, most likely you don't have too many of these anymore. Certainly in the US, no one carries $100 bills anymore, unless you're in some sort of cash business or you're a gambler. Everything has moved to credit cards. And from my friends that have told me in Brazil, almost everyone, including the people who are homeless that have Visa or MasterCard. That was the joke that they told me. So I believe that everyone is familiar with all the options that are out there, especially in Brazil. And we no longer carry cash. The form of money has gone from a big stack of paper to one card with a chip. And are we going to stop there? Is this the final stage of money? Is this going to be what we're going to use in the next 100 years or more or longer? Actually, in China, they have already evolved. In many cases, they have skipped over the credit cards, and they went straight for QR codes and mobile payments. If you go to China today, you have to download WeChat or Alipay, because every restaurant accepts QR codes. In the US, adoption isn't quite as strong for Apple Pay, but hopefully we'll get there. But China is leading the pack. My friends that live in China have told me that they can walk out the door for 3 months, longer than 3 months, with just their phone. Just their phone. Can you imagine that? No wallet, nothing. Not even ID, just their phone. They can do everything through WeChat. They can scan. And in fact, it's as easy as this. Just a QR code right next to the counter. And to the point that, and I'll tell you a story. I was in China last November at 2 o'clock in the morning. I won't tell you if I was sober or not. I went to a street vendor, and I was trying to buy a skewer of lamb. I think it was a Mongolian lamb. I remember very clearly, not very clearly. And I paid with my phone and a QR code. A street vendor. I was shocked. I think I tried to pull out this cash, and then the street vendor stopped me and said, no, WeChat Pay only. That was the moment that I realized that that is the future. If we're at a point in China, there's street vendors with probably don't even have a computer to use a QR code to accept payments. That is the future. And we hope to see that in many different areas, and we hope the US can catch up. So, we have this digital currency now, basically. It's a number in our credit card. It's a number in our phone. Why do we need Bitcoin? Why does this thing even exist? Why did this happen in 2011, 2012, and it has become this massive thing, whether it's worth, one Bitcoin is worth today, I think, $7,500 US. And last December, it was up to 20,000. Like, why and how? Well, this happened. Venezuela is in huge trouble. And if you don't want to read this whole package, basically, the International Monetary Fund has said that, the inflation's at 10,000%, and then they revised it and said it's actually at a 1,000,000% in Venezuela by the end of this year. What does that mean? That means any money that you have in Venezuela becomes zero, becomes pennies, or less than pennies. And why is Bitcoin important in this case? Because it's independent from the government. Venezuela could have used Bitcoin last year. Could have used it yesterday. Right? The people will be much better off on Bitcoin than the Venezuelan currency. And our friends in Argentina, with a quick Google search, you can find that their inflation is at 27%. That's median inflation for this year. What does that mean? That means if this was in real, if you have 100 real, it's actually going to only worth about 73 by the end of the year. And a quick Google search tells me that in Brazil, there's been many different currencies in the past, since 1942. So it's very clear that there's value in having an independent currency that's not controlled by any political party or government around the world, because it creates a different kind of stability, or at least an option for the people around the world. And it's hard to deny that, looking at Argentina and Venezuela today. Not to mention, all these companies, every time you send money to anywhere or change currencies, they charge you about 10+% fees. So already, Bitcoin has done a much better job as a currency to transact worldwide. And it's essential for this borderless economy, this freelance economy, this new type of innovation companies to be able to function without, so many bureaucracies and stops along the way. So I hope at this point we can see at least a little bit of value in why Bitcoin exists and why people are excited about it, especially in areas that need it the most. And these are some of the arguments that I continue to hear, but there's no government. Bingo, that's the point. That's exactly the point. So it's not relying on any government. It's relying on algorithms, and it can't be shut down by anyone. China tried to shut down Bitcoin for about, I think, 2 or 3 times now. It's still here today. If it was going to be shut down, it should have been shut down in 2011, but it's too late. There's 10,000 nodes around the world that are mining. You have to shut down all 10,000 nodes around the world. It's impossible. It's fully decentralized. It's not backed by gold. It's something else that I hear in the US. But hey, US dollar isn't backed by gold. In 1971, we got rid of gold. When I say we, I mean Americans. I'm not really American. And it's not, and we're basing on the promise of the US government and the economy of US to back the dollars. But in reality, the government isn't doing too hot in the economy. It's actually, between taxes, they're only profitable for, I think, 3 years, 5 years out of their last 50 years. They've taken on a tremendous amount of debt, and the debt level is closer to almost World War II level in the US. It's either the economy needs to grow super fast, which, it's growing, but I don't think it's enough. They most likely need inflation, which is another reason why someone like David, our founder, who's libertarian, decided to pursue Bitcoin, because people like him don't believe in inflation or believe in having an option. So a lot of the early Bitcoin, a lot of the early blockchain folks are, share the same beliefs. And another argument I hear is no one is using it. I love this question. Now this is great, because that's what they said about Facebook in 2005, right? In 2004. It started at a little university in Cambridge, Massachusetts, called Harvard. And it started by a 19-year-old kid. No one uses Facebook. It's just a place for you to find other people and find out whether or not they're dating someone, right? Or photos. That's it. And then they compounded and then grew year after year after year. And then people forget that it's not an overnight success. It takes time. 2004 to 2017, it's 13 years of a slow growth. It's not like this. It's actually a slow curve, but it's exponential, right? Every year it's growing faster and faster. And then the more users you have, the faster you grow. And that's what we call network effect, right? Each user that gets on the platform benefits other users, and then it compounds over time. And we believed that's the same for Bitcoin, or any cryptocurrency for that matter. For every person that uses it, it benefits other people from using it because of all the reasons I've stated right before this. It creates a new stability that's away from the centralized government or political party. It's cheaper, borderless, right? But you need two people to agree that it's worth something in order for it to work. And that's actually one of the main reasons why I was hired for this job. I believe that cryptocurrencies are all social networks. And in fact, these are all the social networks around the world. They've all used the network effect to grow to the size that they are today. And we hope that, cryptocurrencies would grow in a similar way. But we are very much at 2004 Facebook today. At 24 million users, or wallet holders, blockchain.io is the largest wallet in the world. And then you have many other wallets, but people have multiple wallets. So I think 24 is a good estimate for where we are around the world of users of blockchain. It's tiny. We're comparing 24 million to 2 billion people on Facebook, or 1.2 billion on WhatsApp, right? It's a very, very small amount. But unlike Facebook, unlike WhatsApp that grew organically year after year after year, we have a lot of help this time. Line in Japan just announced that they're going to integrate blockchain to all their 200 million people on their platform. Telegram raised almost $1 billion to integrate blockchain and cryptocurrency into the platform. Just beginning of this month, Opera, one of the key browsers in the world, have been around for years. I love my Opera. They have this double click thing, going back and forth. I'm not sure if you guys ever use Opera. But they have 55 million users. And they're going to have a built-in cryptocurrency wallet into their browser. And if we can do the math, it's 200 plus 200 plus 55. That's 455 million users, just like that, when they launch. So it goes from 24 million to all the way to 455, and that's only the ones that I've mentioned. So imagine the growth. The growth will not be like Facebook. The growth will be much faster. In fact, today, we have plenty of projects in the ecosystem. There are people that are disrupting finance. There are people that are disrupting remittance. There are people that are disrupting government voting systems, exchanges, currencies, all sorts of things, all over the world. I've been to Estonia, Lithuania, and believe it or not, Lithuania was the number 3 most raised ICO country in the world, behind US and I believe behind China or Singapore. A tiny country in Eastern Europe have been able to accomplish that. Smart people all over the world, the smartest people all over the world, are joining forces to build on the blockchain because of all the reasons I've stated previously. And we're seeing that change dramatically. In fact, just 2018, there's been, $6.2 billion raised in 2018 And we're about halfway, a little bit over halfway through. This has already completely trumped the numbers for venture capital investments. And it's global. It's all over the world. So to quickly summarize, I believe, and we believe in the industry, that creating more efficiency in traditional industries is important. And blockchain is helping that and accelerating that creation. And we believe in globalizing and creating jobs that are borderless. And that's important because it allows economies to grow and to help each other. And instead of this crazy tariffs and all the things that's going on between every country that Trump started. We believe that in the future of this global citizen initiative, and I know Robert believes in that as well. And we believe in frictionless value exchange, which oftentimes is permissionless. You don't have to ask for permission from a government or a bank or a Visa or whoever. In fact, we invested in a company that can send Bitcoin Cash through text messaging. And you can do that through the internet. Anywhere that has the internet, you can send cryptocurrencies. And we hope the world will be more connected and more collaborative in the future because of blockchain. And I don't think blockchain is changing the world. I think the world is changing, and the blockchain is accelerating that change. It's pushing the wave to be bigger. Obrigado.